Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day today. Welcome back to the show, and in this video I'm going to be ranking the Batman movies from worst to best. But it's just my opinion, so if you want to share your ranking in the comments section below, I would love to see that. The unique thing about this franchise is how wildly different each of these movies are from each other. Even ones in the same continuity have different things that stand out from each other. So without any further ado, let's just hop right into the ranking. Coming in at last place is Batman and Robin. This should come as no surprise. This is one of the most iconic examples of a bad movie. Basically, the 1960s Batman TV series made into one movie with a $200 million budget. It's all corny, it's all goofy, and I think that's what the filmmakers intended, but just nobody really wanted to see that. Because when you put a $200 million budget on the 1960s TV series, that kind of sucks the joy out of it. Coming in at number 12 is Justice League. Now, some people would place this lower than Batman and Robin, but for me, I think the cast here is charming enough that I would rather watch this. Now, obviously, there is a lot of studio interference with this movie, so it just had such a large in scale story that they had to tell in 2 hours. So all of the plot points are rushed. They did a lot of reshoots as well under a different director, and you can tell even Ben Affleck was playing Batman. He had lost weight, and the way he shaved was kind of different. And they also rushed to release this movie, so all of the CGI is just really bad. It's unfinished and it looks like a cartoon. So at the end of the day, it's just not a very well-made movie. Coming in at number 11 is The Dark Knight Rises. Number 11 is The Dark Knight Rises. I think this was a good enough way to end the trilogy. It's satisfying enough the way everything is concluded. But when you dive into the details of this movie, it's really not very good compared to the other two movies in this trilogy, or even a lot of the other Batman movies. The one cop guy that became Robin just seemed like such an odd choice. The whole way the plot plays out in this movie, it just seems like a lot of odd choices. And I think Bane's scheme in this movie, it starts off a little bit cartoonish, and there's just a lot of underdeveloped stuff in here. And generally speaking, it's not a bad movie, it just could have been significantly better. It's one of those movies that you'll remember the good moments, but as an entire film, it didn't work all too well. Coming in at number 10 is the Lego Batman movie. It's just a fun movie for families to watch, and it is pretty crazy that they kind of make fun of different things from different Batman movies. So it's a movie that's fun to watch. I don't know if it's as good as some people give it credit for, because when you hop into the third act, I feel like you just stop caring about the story. The movie starts off a lot stronger than it ends. There really isn't that much to say about this movie other than it's a fun time, but obviously not meant to be taken seriously. Coming in at number 9 is Batman 1966, and if you're a fan of the Batman show from the 60s, this is basically an extended episode of that. It's about an hour and a half. And I do think that this version of Batman makes a better show with 25-minute episodes than it does a movie. So it does feel a little bit stretched out. But it is pretty nice that you get to see the Penguin, the Joker, Catwoman, and the Riddler in this. And they're all pretty good versions of them. And it's fun to watch Batman and Robin. This, like the Lego Batman movie, was not meant to be taken seriously. It was just made to entertain you, and that's what it does. So this is a movie that you may or may not be interested in. Coming in at number 8 is Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. And even though this is on the lower half of the list, I think this just shows how good of a list of movies these are. Because this and the next couple I still think are pretty great and underrated. What they do here with both Batman and Superman is very compelling. It's the right way to do a broken hero story, and the conflict feels earned. There are some things that are rushed in here. They kind of had to cut corners to add all of these things into this 2.5 hour movie. But at the end of the day, I really do think this is well made. This is a good version of Batman, and this is just very underappreciated. Coming in at number 7 is Batman Forever. Now, there are some obvious flaws here, some things that just could have been improved on. Obviously, Michael Keaton was replaced with Val Kilmer. Well, it would have been a lot better to see Michael Keaton again. I think Val Kilmer has a solid Batman persona, but not necessarily a Bruce Wayne persona, which I know a lot of people have a complete opposite opinion on that. I really do think as Batman, he's intimidating enough, and kind of just seems like right out of the comics. I don't think his intelligence is displayed very well here, and the romance isn't very good either. But I think Val Kilmer just didn't have a very good performance. You could obviously just tell he didn't even want to be in the movie very much. This movie really isn't as goofy as people say it is. It's way more similar to the Tim Burton films than Batman and Robin, so it should be a crime to even associate it with Batman and Robin. It's significantly better. And this is just kind of a movie that you would have to dive into more of the details about things that work and don't work. I think Tommy Lee Jones is pretty good as Two-Face. It would have been better if Billy D. Williams played him for continuity reasons, and if they took it a little bit more seriously, but it's still a good enough version of the character that we got. And then Jim Carrey as the Riddler, I think that was pretty much perfect casting. That's the one thing I don't understand the argument against. And even the music in this movie is pretty good and underrated. Coming in number 6 is Batman Returns. This was the second movie directed by Tim Burton, and they gave him a little bit more control over the story for this one. So this is really just a movie that I think is entertaining. Some people really like it, some people do not. I personally just think it's pretty entertaining to watch. Obviously, what they do with this story is kind of bizarre. Just the versions of some of these characters. It doesn't really feel like Batman as much as it does just a Tim Burton movie. But I still have fun with it. It's probably one of the best Christmas movies if you think about it. And I don't really have any big complaints other than the build up to the final battle I don't think was done very well. But visually speaking, this was actually pretty impressive what they did with the cinematography and the costume and makeup design. Coming in number 5 is the newest one, The Batman, which came out last year. And this stars Robert Pattinson as Batman. Some people actually really like this and put it at number 1, which I actually understand where they're coming from. This has a really good Gotham City, and it feels realistic while still feeling like a comic book movie. The story here is really intriguing. You want to know what happens next. It's kind of a detective story. I'm pretty excited to see what they do for the sequel, and it is pretty neat that they were able to have Catwoman, the Riddler, Penguin, and Carmine Falcone in this movie, and a Joker cameo at the end, without feeling too overcrowded. And it is 3 hours long, but as I said, you want to find out what happens next. It doesn't seem boring. The action is also done really well with this movie. And I would say these top 5 movies might be some of the greatest movies ever made, because this really is just a fantastic franchise. Coming in at number 4 is The Dark Knight. Now, obviously, it's a hot take to put it anywhere other than the number 1 spot, but I feel like the Joker kind of overshadows Batman in this movie, and they also filmed this in, Chicago, I believe, so it doesn't really feel like Gotham City in a lot of the sequences as much. And then there's some other nitpicks in there that you can find that a lot of people just don't point out, like when Batman falls off of the building and lands on a car, just kind of stuff like that. Now that I've explained why I didn't put it in the number 1 spot, it's still a fantastic movie. Obviously, movies are made to entertain you, and that's exactly what it does. It's 2.5 hours long, and it is just jam-packed with action. There's a lot of intense sequences where you just want to find out what happens next. And unlike so many other movies, as soon as the movie ends, you are kind of excited about the movie that you just watched. You're not sad that it's over, but you're still satisfied with what you got from the movie. Coming in at number 3 is Batman Mask of the Phantasm, and I had a hard time picking if I wanted to put Mask of the Phantasm or Dark Knight in the number 3 spot. I do think this is a little bit of a better made film. This had Kevin Conroy as the voice of Batman and Mark Hamill as the voice of Joker, and it introduced the new villain, the Phantasm, which generally speaking I don't like when they do new villains because there's such a large variety of villains from the comics to pick from. But this one is exceptional. It's just done really well. And then, of course, the Joker is still in this movie. And this movie is just about an hour and 15 minutes long. It's pretty short, but you get everything you want from it. The storytelling is just done really well. And it's pretty neat that they kind of did an origin story for these characters while still keeping a lot of things a mystery. Number 2 is Batman Begins. And this is a very good origin story for Batman. And I think this is where it really shows that Christopher Nolan was a good director for a Batman movie. Just the way the story is told. The villains in it are interesting and compelling. And a Batman origin story is something that's hard to do, but they just did it pretty successfully here. But coming in at number 1 is Batman 1989. And this is where they kind of had a darker version of Batman brought onto screen. And I would say this is cinema at its finest. Just from beginning to end, you're hooked. Tim Burton, I think, is a really good choice for the director as long as you don't give him too much creative control like in Batman Returns. Every single shot in this movie is iconic. The Danny Elfman score is probably the best film score of all time. The story here is pretty simple, but it's effective. What they did with with both Batman and the Joker were kind of inspired by some of their earliest appearances. A lot of people don't buy into this movie, but I do really think that the filmmaking was actually really good here. Anyways, that was my list. Again, if you want to share yours in the comments section below, I would love to see that. And as I said, these Batman movies are very different from one another, and because of that, I really don't think there is a right way to rank them. It kind of just depends in your taste in movies and stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.